Have you ever stopped to wonder about the human cost of wars? Wars, a term that echoes through our history, have shaped the course of our civilization, sometimes for better, but often for worse. They've brought about great change, but at what cost? Lives lost, families torn apart, nations left in ruins. The impact is profound, extending beyond the battlefield, affecting generations, economies, and cultures. Now we delve into the annals of history to explore the most devastating wars the world has ever seen. Our journey begins in the ancient world where the first recorded wars took place. Picture this: chariots, spears, and armies clashing under the hot sun. One such conflict was the Battle of Megiddo, a pivotal event in the 15th century BC. Ancient Egypt and a coalition of Canaanite vassal states locked horns in a struggle for control and influence. Then we have the infamous Trojan War, a decade-long siege that has been immortalized in Homer's epic, the Iliad. This war was sparked by a personal slight, but its ramifications were far more profound, affecting trade routes and power dynamics in the region. These earliest wars, fought with rudimentary weapons and primitive strategies, were nonetheless significant. They were not just about territory or resources, they were about honor, power, and the human spirit. Their stories have been passed down through the generations, shaping our understanding of conflict and human nature. These ancient wars set the stage for future conflicts and shaped the course of human civilization. As we move into the Middle Ages, wars become larger in scale and more devastating in their impact. A dark time in human history, the Middle Ages were marked by major conflicts that changed the face of the world. Among these, the Crusades stand out. Fueled by religious fervor and political ambition, these holy wars left deep scars across Europe and the Middle East. Another significant conflict was the Hundred Years' War, a prolonged struggle between England and France. This war altered the political landscape of Europe and set the stage for the modern nation-state. It was a time of knights and castles, but also of great suffering and destruction. These wars, and others like them, had profound effects. They shaped borders, forged nations, and transformed societies. The Middle Ages were a time of great upheaval and change, much of it driven by these devastating wars. The Age of Revolution brought with it wars that would redefine the world. As the 18th century dawned, the winds of change began to blow across the globe, setting the stage for two major revolutions, the American and the French. In the American Revolution, the 13 colonies sought independence from the British Empire. Its success sparked a beacon of hope for the oppressed, demonstrating that it was possible to challenge authority and establish a new order. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the French Revolution erupted. It was a period of radical political and societal change in France, fueled by Enlightenment ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. The revolution upended the long-standing French monarchy and led to the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte. These revolutions were not just about political change. They fundamentally altered the way societies thought about human rights and governance. Indeed, these revolutions changed the face of the world, setting new standards for human rights and government. The 20th century brought with it two of the most devastating wars in human history. The first was World War I, a cataclysmic event that began in 1914 and lasted until 1918. Triggered by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria, it quickly spiraled into a global conflict involving over 30 nations. The war was characterized by trench warfare, chemical weapons, and a staggering loss of life, with an estimated 9 million combatants and 7 million civilians perishing as a result. Its aftermath led to significant political changes, with numerous revolutions sparking in its wake. But the world had little time to catch its breath. Just over 2 decades later, World War II erupted, proving even more catastrophic. Sparked by the rise of fascism in Europe and the imperial ambitions of Japan in the Pacific, this conflict lasted from 1939 to 1945. It was a war of unprecedented scale, involving over 30 countries and resulting in an estimated 70 to 85 million fatalities, approximately 3% of the world's population at the time. World War II also saw the horrific use of nuclear weapons, a first in human history and a dark testament to the destructive potential of technology. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the United States brought about a swift yet devastating end to the war in the Pacific. The world wars were not merely a clash of armies, but a clash of ideologies, with democracy, fascism, and communism all vying for supremacy. Their effects were far-reaching, reshaping the world's geopolitical landscape. The end of World War II marked the beginning of the Cold War, a tense standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union that would last for almost half a century. The World Wars were a dark period in human history, causing untold suffering and reshaping the global political landscape. They serve as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of conflict and the importance of maintaining peace in our world. In the modern era, warfare has taken on new forms, but its devastating impact remains. As we journey through the pages of recent history, we find ourselves in the throes of the Vietnam War, a complex conflict that began in the mid-20th century. Fueled by the Cold War tensions between the Soviet Union and the United States, the Vietnam War was a deadly manifestation of ideological differences. It resulted in the loss of millions of lives and left Vietnam in a state of devastation and turmoil. Moving on, we find ourselves in the arid deserts of the Middle East during the Gulf War. This conflict, which erupted in the early 1990s, was sparked by Iraq's invasion of Kuwait. The world watched in shock as the vast oil reserves of the region became the center of a major international crisis. The Gulf War showed us the terrifying potential of modern warfare technologies, as the world witnessed the destructive power of missile attacks and chemical weapons. These wars, however, were not just about territorial disputes or resources. They were about ideologies, power dynamics, and the struggle for control. They were about the human cost of conflict, the loss of innocent lives, and the devastating impact on communities and nations. The Vietnam War and the Gulf War, like many modern wars, were characterized by their complexity. They involved multiple nations, different political ideologies, and a host of socio-economic factors. These conflicts were not fought solely on battlefields. They were fought in the hearts and minds of people, in the global media, and in the corridors of power across the world. Their impact on the world is profound. They have reshaped international relations, transformed nations, and altered the course of history. They have left deep imprints on the collective memory of humanity, reminding us of the devastating consequences of conflict. These modern wars have also taught us important lessons. They have shown us the importance of diplomacy, the value of peace, and the need for understanding and cooperation among nations. These modern wars have left deep scars on the world, and their effects are still felt to this day. From the earliest recorded wars to the modern era, the impact of these conflicts on humanity has been profound. These battles, these wars of attrition, these power struggles have not only left a mark on our history, but have also shaped the world we live in today. Starting from the earliest wars, where the conflict was often for survival and territorial expansion, to the Middle Ages, where religion, power, and resources were the primary motivators, war has always been an unfortunate part of human existence. These conflicts have led to countless deaths, the destruction of cultures, and the displacement of people. Progressing to the Age of Revolution, we saw wars fought for the ideals of freedom and democracy. These battles were not just about land or resources, but the very principles upon which societies were built. Their impact was far-reaching, leading to the rise of new nations and the fall of ancient monarchies. The world wars of the 20th century were a turning point in our history. They were devastating on an unprecedented scale, affecting nearly every country on Earth. The loss of life was staggering, and the economic cost was astronomical, but they also brought about significant technological advancements, changes in political landscapes, and shifts in global power. In the modern era, wars have become more localized, but no less destructive. They have given rise to new issues, like the displacement of populations causing refugee crises, and the use of technology in warfare, leading to new ethical and humanitarian concerns. Each of these wars, regardless of their time or place, has left an indelible mark on humanity. They have led to the loss of countless lives, the destruction of cities, the displacement of populations, and the expenditure of vast resources. Yet they have also brought about change, progress, and sometimes even unity. The cost of war is immense, not just in terms of lives lost or money spent, but also in the impact it has on our psyche, our culture, and our future. It leaves scars that take generations to heal. It forces us to question the very nature of humanity and what we are capable of doing to each other. Wars have shaped our history, and their impacts continue to be felt. It is our responsibility to learn from these events, to strive for peace, and to prevent such devastation in the future. Because at the end of the day, the true cost of war is not just counted in the number of casualties or the economic impact, but in the loss of our shared humanity.